Welcome back. So today we observe two related events on the September calendar, and those are the South African National Book Week as well as today's International Literacy Day that's designated by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, that's UNESCO. According to Stats SA's General Household Survey, about 47% of South African children have never read a book. Never read a book. Just try and swallow that. That is just an awful statistic to even think about. And to add to the fact that they've never read a book, some of them have never even drawn pictures with a parent or a guardian. You know, this is supported by the findings of the 2016 Progress in International Reading Literacy Study, and this international comparative literacy assessment of grade 4 learners revealed that 8 out of 10 South African children are unable to read for meaning even in their languages. Let's talk about this. We've got Dr Shahiem Patel. He's the head of Regent School of Commerce and Management. And in studio with us, we have the managing director of Black Child, It's Possible, Bhembe, and he's a facilitator of reading and writing camps. Gentlemen, lovely to have you with us. Thank you, Billy Guy. Thanks for coming into the studio. Dr. Patel, good to have you with us as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I mean, let's begin with you, Dr. Patel. I mean, those numbers get me every single time, and we've been talking to these terrible numbers and the lack of literacy and reading, and I suppose the support of parenting, and never reading a book, never drawing a picture with a parent, or having been read a book to by anybody older than you. This is a very sad situation. What is behind this in South Africa?
Well, you know what, it's interesting to actually consider whether or not there's a demand, or rather a desire on the part of parents to want to help their children to sit down and actually have that bonding time, because the bonding time is what gives rise to the thinking time. And so that's really a fundamental of the family construct, which then by extension becomes a fundamental of the societal construct. And so one would hope and assume that there's a desire to do so, but maybe an inability to actually execute on the desire for whatever reason, be that no training on the part of the parent, no time on the part of the parent, because we know parents work very hard, and time is of the essence when children are in the early evening part of the day, still trying to get done with some kind of homework exercises, for example. And so it really is based on those two premises, whether or not there's a will and desire, and if there is the actual capacity to do so.
Yeah, and Billy, I mean, let's talk to this. So I want to find out at the heart of the problem. And we heard what Dr. Patel saying, you know, circumstances, it's just society perhaps that we live in, and this is just another one of the problems that we are dealt with. But what are you seeing? What do you believe is behind it?
You know, just having been on the ground, one of the things that stands out for me about reading in particular is that it's a lifestyle, and it's something that is exemplary. Most of the time when you see a child read, it's because most of the time at home they had seen somebody read, or within a community that they live, they've seen someone read. What I've seen that is missing when it comes to a lot of why we're not having the high numbers of people taking up reading is that, one, there isn't enough examples, but then number two, reading materials very scarce in our villages, our perhaps predominantly rural township setups. Why I would say so is that materials that we've sort of taken out into whether communities, etc. You may take books. I'll give you an example, Leanne. In 2015, I did an interview with you where we were basically launching a library. This was at Mapanzela Primary School. And this sort of will link for you some of the issues and challenges that we're dealing with. When we launched that library, we had about 25,000 books that were donated and given to the communities. The library was for both the school as well as community to utilize. But here's where the crux of the problem may be. Sometimes the key holders or those who are in management are not, perhaps, you know, this is not something that is up their priority in terms of reading and writing. We found that when we went to go do research at some of these places where an entire library is donated to a community, it is locked up. Why is it locked up? It's because there are certain people who need to facilitate, opening and closing of that library, having reading sessions with these children. Now, if we have people within the education sector and some who are in leadership positions who do not take reading as something that is important to sort of, make available for community, then those who are also supposed to be the recipients of it don't find the importance. But if we now bring it to the home environment, most of the times we actually talk about reading as something that is more just academical.
Yeah.
We don't bring the cool in reading.
Absolutely.
So whenever I speak to young people on stage, for example, I say, why many of you do not take studying seriously is because you don't tie it to a dream or to a goal or to a vision. It's simply just doing a task that you need to pass. So in the case of reading, we always say, how do we tie specific goals, specific dreams to the importance of reading? When I make a simple example, I say, you want to start a business. We have very great young people who have started companies in our country. You want to start a business. The first thing you need to do before doing anything is the ability to communicate, and reading and writing are the first basics before even knowing the business acumen itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are the basic foundations of where you begin. And I suppose if that is not inculcated into your daily life and you're not seeing it and you're not getting the example, where must you learn this from? And Dr. Patel, one of the reasons, obviously we're speaking about a few reasons, but some other reasons that are given, and Billy also speaking to this, is the absence of a reading culture in adult South Africa. That could be one of them. The shortage of school libraries, like Billy was saying. I mean, you donate one and then it gets locked up and you can't get access into it. Another one is the high cost of books. That could be another reason. The low quality of training of teachers. This is a big issue that we're dealing with. These are just some. What do you make of these? And I mean, is there room to build literacy capacity?
Well, the short answer, Leanne, is that we must believe that there is, because that is the truth. Despite the challenges that we may face and despite the pressures that the system might be under, one has to believe that the innate value of being literate will always shine through, no matter what career one tends to pursue. And reading and writing is not just about the pursuit of a career. It's also about the development of ideas, the development of thought, the development of one's ability to contribute meaningfully to discourse, whether it be political, societal, economic, or otherwise, right? And so one comes back to, what do we do about this? We talk a lot about digital literacy in the 21st century. And what does it mean to be literate in the 21st century? And so, yes, the challenges around unavailability of libraries or lack of capacity to keep libraries going, rising cost of books, are all challenges that can be met or can be addressed through digital solutions. And I think that as an absolute system, with all role players and stakeholders being absolutely present in that system, the role of technology in overcoming some of these challenges are incredibly powerful. And we're seeing these examples coming through already, but the problem is getting to a point of critical mass where the technology solutions being implemented are not piecemeal or are not scattered and dotted across various parts of whether it be rural areas of South Africa or even urban areas of South Africa. What we need to get to a point where technology is actually permeated to every aspect of society, and we normalize a reading culture. We normalize when we have informal chats, whether that be at a braai or whether that be just at a water cooler at work. It's not so much about what I read on Twitter or Instagram. It's more about what I've read in a book, even if that be a digital version. And I think by normalizing that culture, that sort of example that my colleague had spoken about earlier, where people are reading at the home, children are more likely to pick up on that and to actually latch onto that demand, or rather that love for reading.
Yeah, it's so difficult. I mean, I would do a test with my sort of 10-year-old. Let me just take my 10-year-old daughter, who have always known to love reading. I mean, she's got a wealth of books, has always asked for books. But now, suddenly, if I had to put the iPad in front of her or a book in front of her, where she could scroll through TikTok and YouTube videos and watch brain-numbing things, I promise you I know what she would choose. And she would go rather for the iPad than the book.
Sure.
And I think I'm speaking for a lot of parents that, you know, with the advent of all of these things that reading is competing with, do you find that that's happening, Billy, as well? I mean, I'm now talking more to a privileged kind of kid who perhaps has the access to watch this kind of stuff in social media as opposed to reading a book. Like, it's almost now having to compete with so much more to find the interest in reading.
You know, the interesting part is that a physical book, a hard copy, and also the digital give two different things to emotions. One is a physical copy, when one is taught how to read or has the love for it, is that they get lost and they get immersed in the book and in that content itself. A cell phone, or for example a digital device, has options. You know, you have the book, but also you have the multiple options of your WhatsApp may go off, your social media may go off. The comparison that I found, Leanne, is that when reading and we give people a book, the culture of it also, we get people to be able to be lost in a whole new world. You know, whenever I speak about reading to young kids, I say that a book gives you the ability to get lost in a world that you may not be living in at the moment. So a 10-year-old, for example, like yours, who may be privileged, perhaps, like you say, and would at any time leave a cell phone. These are some of the things that I would say we have a 50-50. We have young people who, you know, you put a cell phone, you put a book. A cell phone would ideally still be the choice of note. Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
We need to speak to that as well.
Yeah.
Just Billy, while I'm speaking to you, you spoke about these libraries in the Ekurhuleni schools, and I mean that they lie there and perhaps are not utilized the way they should be, which is very disappointing to hear. But one of the concerns I think you've also stated is that teachers even lack interest. To help me understand that.
You know, Leanne, what I've realized is that a lot of our social conditions that we have in our country, we can't tackle them just looking at one thing or perhaps in a silo. Most of our problems, we have to have a multi sort of approach to it. So in the case of a school, most times we get into a school, whether as sponsors, because we work with a lot of them, we get into a school and perhaps we just focus on the kids. But we forget the fact that these kids need to be guided, their resources need to be distributed by adults, and in that case it would be teachers. Now, if a project or a program is set out, whether it's for just children, you still need to have the buy-in of the adults. The point I was trying to make is that if the adults themselves or the teachers are not also having a reading culture or love for reading or see the importance in it, it is then difficult to filter that down to the young ones who really need this reading approach. So what are some of the solutions, Leanne? I speak about taking solutions back to the home setting. Number one, perhaps each household in South Africa should at least have one single book. I actually advocate for each home to have a small little library, a little corner where, you know, we have shrines in our home where we call this our quiet corner, but also have a shrine where we call this our knowledge corner. This is where we teach each other. This is where we share. This is a safe space. But also, we also need to preserve time. Remember, with such busy schedules that we have, if reading is such a non-entity to a lot of families and homes, how do we make it a priority? I said this, link it to a dream. Now, young people, whenever they are perhaps engaging in visualizing the future that they want, I often say to them that it's not only about the culture of reading, but it's a culture of you being able to also express yourself. The more views that you hear, the more views that you read, give rise to more of your own view. So home is where it all begins. A library at home, at least one book at home, and then also I challenge those who are avid readers. Whenever you read, those who do not read, go and share a story.
Indeed.
Perhaps it may plant a seed that perhaps reading is something that is worthwhile doing.
And also perhaps donate the books that you've read. I mean, unless you really feel attached to it, that you want to read it again, go for it. But a lot of the times we don't. And we have these books sitting around, filling up shelves that perhaps we can offer to somebody else to read. Dr. Patel, just, you know, one of the sad stories is, I mean, Billy Guy is one of them, that, you know, building libraries packed with like 25,000 books, and yet they're not in use today. You know, and this for me is a very sad testimony of how the lack of seriousness we take towards reading. The fact that libraries sit closed and nobody even goes into them. They're like museums that are not used. These are not exceptional cases. It happens in communities and schools all the time. Why? What do we need to fix that?
Yeah, I think that it brings me back to the point that I made right at the beginning around this issue of the will versus the capacity. And the point you're bringing up speaks directly to the will or the desire to want to engage with reading material. And I think that one of the ways, and there's no really one single answer or one silver bullet that will actually solve this problem altogether, but I think it's a series of little tiny initiatives and small grassroots level initiatives and ideas that needs to be given more support, that hopefully with the right level of engagement and support from government in particular, I think that these little programs and initiatives that are being done by organizations at the forefront of literacy, those organizations will actually start to flourish. So I think that's the one idea. The other idea that I think could be very powerful is to promote the other half of literacy, which is writing. And so when you have a culture of writing within a family, within a community, and you support each other and you support the ones who are writing, I think that might breed love in terms of reading. So for example, if I'm writing a book, and whether or not you're interested in reading, but just because of the fact that you know me, you're more inclined to say, well, okay, let me give you your book a read, and you might start to tell 2 or 3 or 5 other people, and so forth and so forth. And so I think that, like I said, it's a multifaceted challenge, but sometimes less is more in this kind of an environment, Leanne.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I just think you've got to keep on doing what you're doing and pushing the message. We'll keep pushing the message from our side as well. I mean, Billy Guy, 30 seconds, give us a wrap up from your side. Just, something that you'd like to impart, and perhaps for someone that's watching that A, is not reading to themselves or not reading to their own children. How do we fix this? Come, give us a message.
A good message I'd leave is the fact that, one, when I went through one of the toughest times in my life, reading assisted me, it became a friend, but also writing helped me to express the feelings that were within me. A lot of people are going through depressing times at the moment, and reading can perhaps expose you, as I say, to things that may encourage you and may also open your eyes to something that is not of your current environment. Writing is a good form of expression. For one, it commits you to what it is that you may want as a dream or a vision, but also writing also helps you to share your story with others who may be going through something that you may be. As a last point, Leanne, I'd also say that if people haven't taken reading seriously as yet, they'll see the fruits of what they are not doing in later years. Speak to perhaps somebody who has not been able to read or write, and they'll tell you the difficulties of simply just looking at a sign of a building and knowing what to do with it. Contracts that are given to them that may perhaps defraud them. So these are little things that we don't look at, that in the future, if you do not know how to read and write, you are not able to express yourself better as a human being. And as a last point, Leanne, as I said, it's my queen's birthday today, Refilo, and I'd like to say a big happy birthday to her.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay. Write her a beautiful card and send that message to her. Listen, thanks so much for coming in, and enjoy the birthday and the trip you're taking with it. Black Child is Possible MD Billy Guy Bhembe and Dr Shahiem Patel, Head of Regent School of Commerce and Management, discussing the literacy importance of literacy and, of course, the culture of reading and writing in South Africa.